Oh, man. How you guys doing this week? Y'all doing all right? A lot of people are regional track and stuff. Hey, well, one thing that is definitely the same today as it was when I was in high school is that there is always a fair share of drama when it comes to teenagers. There's always some drama going on of he said, she said, he broke up, she broke up, cat fight thing. And being the youth pastor, I always hear about it. And as I thought about it, I thought about some of the drama. Our hair was probably a lot bigger. The girls had the big claw, the big Kennesaw. We call it the Kennesaw claw. And if like fire got near their hair, like 3 girls would die a year because they were smoking cigarettes and their hair spontaneously combusted. Our pants were baggier. Now you guys are wearing the chubbies, which I don't understand. Just for a side note, girls would never wear shorts that called themselves chubby, but only guys would do that. But I think about I just thought, man, I'm super grateful that I didn't grow up in your day and age, because we had the same drama. It was the same thing, same cat fight, same stuff going on, same amount of girls fussing with girls, same amount of guys that wanted to fight. But the one thing that we didn't have is we didn't have the internet, which I go, gosh, you always it's gonna happen to you, I promise you. You sit there one day when you're like my age, when I was your age, and go, I'm never gonna be that old guy. And then you're going, I'm the guy that didn't have internet. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. But we didn't have internet, we didn't have Instagram, we didn't have Facebook, we didn't have Twitter. We didn't get broken up with, and then the next day see someone taking a picture of themselves with their new guy at the river, where everybody else could see, and you just feel like a total loser. But I thought about all that, the drama, and then one of the things I was glad about not having all this is because how impulsive I was, and just how just quick to react. Because one of the things that it was even funny tonight, I was getting ready to hit play. Kirsten starts singing another song, and I'm like, no, what are you doing? I'm about to hit play, so then I've got to redo everything, so I'm switching stuff off. And a natural tendency for me is to quickly get angry. It's just like when I was younger, it's kind of always been something that I've struggled with. And I was terrible with drama. I was terrible with bad situations. In fact, I have gotten more trouble when I've been angry or had drama around me than probably any other time in my life. To the point of usually, where there were a lot of times that I was in the wrong, but because of the way I responded, I discredited myself and totally overshadowed what the person that had done in the wrong. I remember always going back home to Atlanta as an adult, and my parents still have the house that I grew up in anymore. They just sold it 2 years ago. But I remember going back just before they sold it, and I remember walking in my room, which my room had got converted to an office right after I left. My mom was like, she would never have done that to my brother's room. His always had his picture on the counter, and he was the favorite. But my door still had a big crack in it where I punched my door with my fist. And it was like, can you seriously not fix this? I'm constantly reminded of just stupidity of myself, of growing up. And I think the reason that I got frustrated, and the reason for some of you, we say let it go, is when we choose to let our anger control us, and we choose to be upset and be frustrated, we don't think clearly. And maybe you go, I don't struggle for anger. Maybe you find yourself here today coming in and you're going, I don't find myself angry, I just find myself sad. I found myself hurt, and I found myself broken. It's like someone just walked all over me and has just crushed my heart. And it's like the people that have walked out on me and have hurt me have no care or thought for how I feel. And I think if we were truthful today, that many of us would say we have a lot of anger, but there's a lot of us in the room that we have a lot of sadness, a lot of brokenness, a lot of hurt. And if we're not careful, what will happen is that will quickly turn to anger, and it'll quickly turn into a way that we'll try to find to get even or to get back at someone. And I think if we're truthful in this room, all of us at this sometime in our life have felt like we're about to blow our lid or about to have a moment where we're going to come unglued. But what I hope that you see tonight in that moment. It should be on the screen. That when you face this question of like, when you're in the moment, like when your parents are at their worst, when your boyfriend breaks up with you over a text message because he's a punk and can't have a face-to-face conversation, or when someone cheats on you, or when someone betrays you, or when someone stabs you in the back. In that moment, this is what I hope and pray. In that moment, what I would hope and pray is that you would ask this question: how will I respond? How will I respond? Because what I want you, everybody look here. What I want you to realize is, it doesn't matter what he did or what she did. It doesn't matter. And quite frankly, God doesn't care about that at this moment. What he cares about is how are you going to respond. Because that's the only thing you have control over. You see, I don't have control over someone else's actions. But I am very much in control of how I respond. And what I hope and pray that you would realize is that how we respond in that time of adversity and how we respond when life goes south, it defines who we are. And it, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, it begins to easily shape how people perceive us in life. That when we choose to blow our lid and we choose to get upset. I mean, just me being honest, this would be something that would always mess me up in ministry. I would have this great, incredible week. And if you can imagine doing student ministry, it's like doing this. It's like you go on a trip and you go hang out, or you go and do a camp. And if you can imagine, it's like, if you can imagine drawing a line from every single one of your hearts to mine, and just like pipe in all your junk, all your problems, all your sickness, all your issues, all your junk, all your issues, all the stuff that you bring. And all week long, that's getting plugged into me. And it's just overwhelming because I care. And naturally, I should care. If you don't care, you shouldn't be a pastor. But instead of always knowing how to deal with things in an appropriate way, and I would let my anxiety get to me, I would let things get to me, and then instead of dealing with my stress in a correct way, instead of really trusting God and feeling like I had to be the one that trusts someone, I would have someone do something or something would go wrong, and I would overreact, and it would undermine everything good that had happened that whole week. And I'd be like, I don't understand this. And then finally it came to a point of going, you know what, it doesn't matter all these other things. I'm responsible for me. I'm responsible for how I act. And it doesn't matter what someone says to me, and it doesn't matter what someone does to me, because I know people are going to talk smack on me. I know people are going to betray me. I know people are going to hurt me. I know people are going to let me down. But in that moment, I have a choice. That I get to choose how I'm going to react. So for the next couple of weeks, what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about this idea of forgiveness. And I pray for a lot of you in this room that maybe for the first time that you could begin to forgive. That you could begin to let go. That you could begin to let go of some of these things that are on these balloons. That we could begin to let go of some of the things that junk that you bring in here. And tonight, as we're starting out, that's just kind of what we want to start out saying, is that more that you hold on to a grudge, the more that you hold on to that grudge, the more that grudge has a hold on you. And that's the bottom line tonight. The more that you hold on to a grudge, it's the more that grudge has a hold on you. And the tension with this that we live with is you live with the same tension that I live with. Our first reaction is, I want to get even and I want to get back at them. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you. You break up with me, I'm going to change our Facebook status first so that I look like the one that broke up with you. We always have these things in our heads. Because it's in our instinct to fight back. Because we feel like getting revenge or or holding a grudge is going to actually satisfy us. But I want to ask a different question to you tonight. And I really pray that you would listen tonight. Because usually when we don't listen and we don't act and we act disinterested, it tells me something. Usually people who say they're not interested in the things of God, it tells me something about them. They're mad at God. Because why would you not be interested in God? And if you're not interested in God, it would probably be because you're frustrated with Him about something. You're frustrated about your home life. You're frustrated about some situation in your life. I think God has something to say to you tonight about that. And my prayer would be that you would begin to see, that you begin to ask the question is, me holding a grudge and me being resentful to someone, could it quite possibly hurt me more than it hurt the other person? And what if the truth is the more you hold on to a grudge and the more you don't let something go and the more you kind of think about it, and we've all done this, especially if you're wired like me, we have that conversation with that person over and over and over in our head of what we want to tell them. I'm going to tell them this, I'm going to tell them this, and it's like craziness in our head. But the more that we continue to do that, the more it grabs us by the neck. You know, I went hunting with Maverick a while back. If you don't know who Maverick was, he's the guy that got pushed into the river by Haven. But I went hunting with Maverick. I love to hunt. I love to kill things. It's a good stress reliever. That's a joke. But I do like to kill things. I like to shoot it. I like to hunt. I like all that. But one of the things that I had never known about, and we went predator hunting, but one of the things I didn't know about is they do these things. How many of you have ever heard of, like, they set snares? Anybody ever set a snare? All right, Chase. Adam, Kristen Hackett, you set snare. Anybody else set snares? You set a snare. Anybody else? Anybody set snares? Travis, you set a snare. I had no clue what setting a snare is. Basically what you do is, y'all all know what setting snares is, or anybody know? You basically take a piece of wire, it's like in a string, and it's a loop. And it like is a loop, and you'll set it down like on a fence line where you see that coyotes are crossing, or like where a hole comes out, and so when they come out, their head goes through it, it grabs them by the neck, and their first instinct is to do what? Run. And what do you think it does? Zzz, and it chokes them to death. The harder they pull it, the more it chokes them out. And so usually they're dead by the time you find them. Yeah, it's terrible. I guess if you hate coyotes, unless you're a coyote lover. We'll say it's terrible just for all the animal activist rights that are watching this on the World Wide Web. Which I'm sure they're not watching. Someone's going to call PETA. But basically, I thought that is exactly what it's like. That's a great picture of what we do. Is when we give into anger, when we get mad, it's like the harder this coyote fights, or this predator, this bobcat, or whatever it is, the harder this animal fights to get away and to fight against it, and to fight the problem. It just chokes the life out of it. And I feel that's a great picture of what's going on in our lives. That the more we just give into this grudge, the more that we give in to text about this, the more that we get on to Facebook, stalk that person to find out what they're doing, the more it just feeds into the fuel of like destroying who we are. And I think God looks at us and goes, some of you in the room, you need to let things go for once. And trust me. Because that's exactly what can happen. You see, there's a lot of you that you're prisoners of your own baggage. We have these things up here that says, what's your baggage? You know, some of you, your life sucks because your dad cheated on your mom. And because your dad chose to be a fool, you now spend every other Christmas with him in another state. You see, when we put it in terms like that, it doesn't sound so appealing. But the truth is whether it's divorce, or whether it's cancer, or whether it's, your dad never tells you he loves you, or your mom and your dad are always fighting, or you fill in the blank. But if we're going to be honest, there's a lot of us in this room carrying baggage. And that's not like the kid who's disinterested in the things of God. That's like the kid in this room who's leading a Bible study. Because all of us have been stepped on. All of us have been hurt. And what happens is, make sure that the baggage looks a little different to one person, but over here it looks like this way, and over here it looks this way, and over here, maybe this baggage is here. I've been lied to, or I've been ridiculed, or I've been accused, or I've been abused, or I've been abandoned, or I've been bullied, or I've been shut out. And you just fill in the blank. And it doesn't matter who you are. Yes, I was staring at you because you're talking for the last 20 minutes. But it doesn't matter who you are. We all, if we were honest, would say that we're carrying something like this around. And I think the lie is that you bought into is that everyone else is screwed up, and everyone else is normal, and my life's the only one that's messed up. But that's not true. You can have a great home life. And if you left things that are unchecked, what happens is we begin just to pile up baggage and hurt that we carry with us. And God doesn't want that. He wants you to be free of that. Some of us are carrying scars and hurts for a long time. And that's not what He wants for you. You're carrying stuff that was never intended to have a hold on your life. And that's why Paul addresses this in Romans chapter 12. So if you have your Bibles, you can turn me to Romans chapter 12. If not, Bible on the screen. But Paul says this, addressing this common problem that we all have. He says in verse 17, he says, do not repay anyone evil for evil. He says, be careful what you do. Be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everyone. And immediately the question that I would have, that you would probably have, is going, okay, but who's going to make things right if I don't? You know, if I'm not going to repay evil for evil, who's going to have my back? Who's going to watch out for me? Because I think that's just a normal thing to ask. You know, if you have a parent that walks out on a family and leaves the family high and dry, it's a natural question to ask, who's going to help pay the bills? Who's going to pick up this? When someone is in a business agreement and if someone does something shady and leaves someone high and dry with a ton of debt and they're nowhere to be found, we begin to, it happens all the time in life. And our first reaction, I think, is like, you know, is what about me? But Paul addresses that 2 verses later. He says this, he says, do not take revenge, my friends, but leave room for God's wrath. For it is written, it is mine to avenge. I will repay, says the Lord. So whose job is it to seek revenge? Is it mine or is it God's? It's God's. I mean, that sounds a little kind of shady. You're like, all right, God, I pray you would seek revenge on them. Pray that you would mess my ex-boyfriend up. You know, and that'd probably be a little weird. But I think if you're done wrong, God's going, hey, this isn't something that just kind of caught me off by, off radar. But I think what happens is we want to take things in our matter of our own hands. But I wrote this, I think, on the screen. It says, so what is at stake when you're tempted to get even? And I reminded this when I heard Andy say something about this years ago. He says that any time that we say yes to temptation, we're making a statement about our confidence in God. And when I feel like I always got to defend myself, when I feel like I always got to get even with someone, or I feel like I always have to like make it a case, and for my case, I'm not showing any confidence in God. And that's a hard thing to learn. It took me a long time in life. It was just probably about 2 years ago that I really felt like I got in a place where I felt like I didn't always have to defend myself. I realized that people are not going to always like me, and I was okay with that. People were going to say things about me that weren't true. It's just the nature of life. It's just the nature of what I do for a living. It's just the nature for, following Jesus. You're going to face ridicule. You're going to face, troubles. And I have to realize that I don't have to defend myself. That I have to really trust in that God has my best interest at hand. And I think that when we try to get even, we're saying that God doesn't have our best interest. We're saying that nothing could be further from the truth, that God doesn't care. But we have to realize God does care. We live in a fallen world. We live in a world where there's sin. We live in a world that is not as God designed it. When sin entered the garden with Adam and Eve, everything was shattered from there on out. Everything was messed up. It's the reason we were all born in this room and no one had to teach us how to hit. No one ever had to teach us to stay mind. No one ever had to teach us to be selfish. It's just in our nature, the way we're born. And it's not because God's insensitive or He doesn't care. So what is our responsibility? What is our response should it be? And Paul says in verse 21, he says, do not overcome evil. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. And we don't overcome with evil because if you hurt me and if Jocelyn hurts me and then I hurt her back, then what is she going to want to do? She's going to want to hurt me. It's an endless cycle of who can get even with someone, you know. I do something to Corey, Corey does something to me. It's like it never stops. But Corey does something mean to me and I do something nice for him. It null and voids it. You know, it just ends it. Someone's always being a jerk, there's a reason they're miserable. There's a reason they're always putting people down. And maybe that if we just went and tried to change the way we react to them, that maybe we would see that things would change. And I think if there's no greater example, especially this just coming off Easter, you think about Jesus. I mean, here we have the Son of God. He hasn't done anything ever wrong. There's no sin in His life. They're beating Him, spitting on Him, crucifying Him, calling Him names, doing all this crazy stuff. So we have this incredible, like unbelievable, horrific thing that's taking place. And He never responds with anything that's hateful. In fact, when He does speak, He says, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. And I think what Jesus says, and you're going, well, you know, God doesn't know what it's like, or that He doesn't really. When is the last time you were crucified? When is the last time someone stripped you naked in front of New Braunfels Stadium and beat the crap out of you in front of everyone and ripped every single piece of your skin almost off? And then stuck a crown of thorns in your head and said, Hail, King of the Unicorns! Hail, King of the Canyon Cougars! When's the last time someone made a public display of you in the lunchroom and everyone sat around and mocked you and laughed at you? And what would your response be? I don't think it would be, Lord, forgive them, for they don't know what they do. I think it would immediately be, how am I going to get even to these people? And what Jesus does is He goes, and I'm not asking you to be like the world. I'm asking you to be like me. I'm asking you to take a different path. Some of you are so angry at your dad or your mom because of some stuff that's gone on, and God's going, you've got to let it go. You've got to let it go. You cannot stink and keep holding on this crap. You can't keep holding on it. You're 16 years old, you're 15 years old, you're 17 years old. You have no control over your parents' actions. That's them. It's not your fault. And for some of you, for the first time, you can go, I need to just let this go. And maybe it's not your parents, maybe it's some other thing, but there's some piece of baggage for some of us, all of us, that we're carrying around. And God's going, you need to let it go. You need to forgive that person. You need to give this to me. And that's why Paul writes in Colossians 3:13, he says, therefore, as God's chosen people, that would be hopefully us if we're believers. He goes, holy and dearly loved. He said, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. And bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has grievances against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. This is like crazy, powerful words. And I believe these words are like coming out of watching what Stephen did in Acts chapter 9. Where Paul then was Saul and he was holding all these people's clothes while they threw rocks and killed this guy and stoned him to death. And while they're stoning Stephen, he's saying, you know, God forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And here's this guy, Saul, who's like murdering Christians. And he's just sitting around holding people's coats, watching them murder this guy. And as he's watching people act totally out of hate, he's watching someone who's filled with God act totally out of love and speak forgiveness into just like the most horrific situation. And I think that those things like that were just burned into Paul's memory, that when Paul's writing these books of the Bible, half the time he's in like prison, he's in chains. You know, he's not being treated, he's not up in the Holiday Inn, he's not in the Four Seasons Hotel, hooked up with Wi-Fi. He's like in a dungeon with like rats around him and crap to eat. And he says, there's a better way. And it's not getting even. And I can promise you this, as long as you care about getting even, or as long as you constantly Facebook stalk that person, or as long as you constantly feed with your friends and you're around, and you always talk about that thing or that person that's causing you stress, as long as that's going on in your life, you are never going to be able to forgive. You're never, ever going to be able to move on in your life, and you're always going to be carrying this baggage around. And I got news for you. This baggage is heavy. It was never meant for you to hold. It was never meant for you to carry around. It's exhausting. And forgiveness, it breaks the power of a grudge. Forgiveness brings healing. But most importantly, forgiveness sets you free. You see, like my parents, I'm very grateful. I love them to death. They have not been divorced. I'm very lucky. I'm 37 years old now. My parents have always been married. But this is what I know. There's probably 50% of this room, if we were to be honest, your parents have been divorced. And with that, there comes a lot of pain. And there comes anger. And there comes frustration. And there's probably not a week that goes by that I don't hear some story with you guys about how this is an issue. But what happens is when we finally say, all right, God, you know what? I'm going to give this to you. I'm going to give my parents divorce to you. I'm going to give this to you because you know what? I don't need to be in the middle of this, but I just need to let it go. And I begin to let it go. And I'm not dealing with it. I just cut it loose. I'm snip this. There you go. It's like, why did that not work? It did work. You're like, how did that stay there? I had to have a way to get it back down. But I think that's like, it's like we want to go, hey, it's nowhere to be seen now. So when I do that, I take what's my baggage, I just turn it around, and it's just nothing. Because I'm giving it to God. I remember when I was first dating Evie, I wasn't allowed to date her for a year and a half. Her parents didn't like me. I smoked, I listened to heavy metal music, I was crazy, had baggy pants, big chain wallet. They thought I had my hair, I was highlighted with crazy colors. They thought, what in the world has my daughter got into? She's married to the devil, or she's dating the Antichrist. No, they didn't think that. But I mean, I was really coming out of I was very angry at the time, listening to a lot of crazy music. And I remember being like, I was loving God, but yeah, I still had a lot of issues I needed to work. Like, I'd show up to Bible study and smoke, or I'd do certain things, and I just thought about, I'm going, if this was my daughter, would I want this person dating Mackenzie? I'm like, no, I would not. But I didn't understand why her parents didn't want her to date me. I do now. But like, for me, I had a lot of anger towards her dad, towards Ken. And I was frustrated with him. But I realized that I couldn't get him out of my head. Like, he always made me angry. Like, he frustrated me because I loved my wife and I wanted to be with Abby so bad. And like, I just thought he was this person that was keeping me from having what I wanted. But what was happening is I was keeping myself from having what I wanted. But more importantly, like, I was letting my anger consume my life and destroy me as a person. And then one day I was cleaning my dad's lab at night to make extra money because I was just a poor college kid at the time. And I remember getting down on my knees, my dad's dirty old lab before he bought his new one, on my hands and knees on the filthy floor, and just saying, God, I can't keep doing this. I can't be mad at him forever. I can't, he maybe never let me date his daughter. But I just can't carry this hate anymore in my life. Because it's eating me alive. So God, I'm asking you, I don't like him right now. I'm asking you to supernaturally help me forgive this man for what I feel like he's done to me, and help me learn to honor him. And that began a process of God changing my heart and opening my eyes to where her dad was right on a lot of things. And ultimately, it came to a point when we were married, guys. I went to him after we were married just because I felt convicted and said, you know what? I didn't honor you always. And I just started crying. It's like, man, I'm sorry. I did not honor you, and I caused your daughter not to honor you, and that makes me sad. That your sweet girl would dishonor you because of me and my sorriness. And he looked at me and said, man, I have forgiven you a long time ago. You wouldn't be a part of our family. But that didn't matter, and that mattered to me. But it was for me to go, you know what, I need to own up to some of the things where I have responsibility. Part of being a grown-up, part of being a follower of Christ is going, you know what, I need to take responsibility for my own actions. And so I knew that, you know, I wasn't always wrong on everything, but I was definitely a part of a lot of it. But I could take responsibility for what I knew I was in charge of. And to me, guys, we use God as such a cop-out. Of like, I can't do this because of God, or I can't. No. You can't do this because of you. And what we need to begin to realize is stop using God, because when you use God as a cop-out for something and it's not something God's directly spoke to you, that's breaking one of the 10 Commandments. That's taking the Lord's name in vain. He's going to hold you accountable for it. That you go, no, I need to think through my actions. I need to think through why I'm saying these things. And let them go. And when we do, we begin to say, God's big enough to meet our needs. And what I really hope tonight is what, you know, I chose a couple divorced and cheated on. I don't know. I think those are easy. But I think for some of you, you just need to do this. You need to begin to let go. You need to begin to let go of some of these things. Because it's killing you. You know, I used to laugh, I laugh about this now. I love my father-in-law. We have a great relationship. I think he's an awesome dad. He produced 2 incredibly, beautifully godly women. Both his daughters are married to student pastors. I love Amy's sister, Brooke. She's got an incredible husband in Brian. He spoke to y'all at Believe Weekend a few years ago. And I look at it and go, but he didn't have to apologize for those things. But what I realize is if I want to be a godly man, if I want to follow Jesus, then you know what? These things are going to happen. I'm going to get bullied. There are probably people in this room, truthfully, they're going to talk smack on me at times. They're going to think I'm unfair. They think I don't like them. They think that I only like certain kids, or I think I only hang out with certain kids, and if you don't do this, then I'm not cool with you. That's going to happen. I can't change that. But what I can change is how I react to that. Because that's going to define what people think about me. And what I would hope and pray is that some of you would go, man, the greatest thing that you can do is you can finally say, I don't want to carry this baggage anymore. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of carrying this around. God never intended me to carry this crap with me all the time because it's exhausting. And that maybe we would finally go, Jesus, I'm going to get on my knees and begin to trust you. And I think that's where we get freaked out, is because that's scary. Because I think deep down within us, we sometimes wonder, is he really good enough? And is he really going to take care of me? And I get that. Some of you have been, really hurt in life. And you have a reason to not trust. But I promise you, when Jesus' hands were nailed wide open on the cross, it was an open invitation for you to come. For all of us to come. All of us who are weary, to come and find rest. To come and embrace the forgiveness. Jesus died and rose from the grave so he could set you free of all this baggage. Not so you had to keep carrying it and try harder. He wants to take it from you. So tonight I want to ask you to do something when you get home. I know you've got homework. I know you got stuff to do. But I want you to make a list. I want you to get out. I want you to make a list of just things that people have done that have hurt you. For some of you, it's going to take a long time because you've just been hurt in life. People have wronged you, and they have taken your innocence, and they have hurt you, and they have betrayed you, and they have lied to you. And some of us, it's not going to be as long. But I want you to begin to write it out. And I want you to begin to write maybe how you're feeling. And then I want you to write out the people that have hurt you. Write them by name. Not post it on Facebook. I want you to write it in a notepad or something. Or in a document on your laptop. Or in your journal. And then I just want you to find somewhere quiet, somewhere away from everyone. And I want you to just try this. I want you to get on your knees before God. You say, God, I can't live like this. I can't keep living like everything's okay when I lay in bed at night and I know everything's not okay. I can't keep, like, some of you girls in the room, like some guy broke your heart and like you're absolutely drop dead gorgeous, but you constantly see yourself in the mirror as not being pretty enough or not having self-worth. It's craziness. Some of you guys, your self-worth is so tied up in who you are and what your name is on some stupid board in a workout room. And all that can be taken from us in an instant. Like that, it's gone. And then maybe we would get before God tonight and say, God, would you do something in and through my life where I could let this go? God, I'm asking you to help me. And I believe God supernaturally, if you're not even a follower of Jesus, I believe that God's big enough to do this. He's big enough to come and work in your life and show you that He is an all and powerful God. Because the bottom line is this, guys. When you won't let go of a grudge, when you won't let go of some kind of hurt in your life, it is going to have a hold on you and never let go. So Jesus, this is what we ask. We ask, God, that you would work in and through our hearts. Lord, we recognize that we come into a room tonight. A lot of us are doing really good. But Lord, if I'm truthful and I'm honest, because I know what's going on in this room, there are a lot of people in this room that are sad. A lot of people in this room that are really angry. Lord, I pray that you would do a work in their lives, where they wouldn't worry about someone else or what so-and-so said, but God, that they would trust you. And Lord, for those of us that call ourselves friends of those people, I pray we wouldn't add fuel to the drama. But God, I pray that we would speak truth and love into those situations. God, we love you. We thank you that when you were nailed to the cross, God, your arms spread open wide was an invitation for all of us to come. I pray that's what we would do. We love you, Jesus.